Hello there, welcome to this reaction video. I've followed Louise for a while and I thought I'd do a quick reaction video as a somewhat competitive, well, I'd like to go to tournaments. I don't really know how competitive I am. Video where Louise has done this. She went to AOS Worlds basically, and she's predominantly a painter. Go follow her. She's great. I thought I'd take a break from painting my Ushabti with great bows to I've this is my level of painting. It's rubbish. Louise is like a million times better than me. Anyway, she's done a video where she's like commenting on AOS Worlds because she went there over the last week, which is a big AOS tournament. It's I've never been. I'm not that caliber of person. I'm somewhat inferior to all of them at the old AOS. But I thought it was interesting, like some of her takes. Just wanted to show you guys some stuff. Like she's gone through like a common myth busting sort of thing. So like, competitive players don't
They were
paint.
all so good. And if you needed any more evidence as to how much hobby effort and love these guys put into their competitive
I love the hats. That's just fantastic. Dunce.
gaming pieces, then take a look at these pairing cards made
Right, so these things
by
I'll just
Lex
skip
from
forwards.
the
So basically when you play a team,
entire
let's see if we can get
box
a better pause.
dioramas for
There was
each
one there, wasn't there?
faction, which is
I can't.
absolutely
I
insane.
can't pause it. I can't get it. Anyway, so essentially, when you do pairings, you put forwards. There's a whole weird mini game about pairing everybody off in a team. So if you've got like a team of 6 against 6, you start off with like you put forward one team puts forwards 2, and then the other person puts forwards 1, and then that one gets to choose between the 2, and then the other 2 fight somebody else, and there's this whole kind of weird pairings dynamic. So what you often see at like team tournaments are lists that are very heavily skewed in one direction to beat something very specific. You don't tend to see very many generalist lists that are designed to beat all comers. So basically, you'll have some lists that are like DPS checks. So there'll be like loads and loads of like high toughness, high save kind of units in a list, and then there'll be if this was like a old world tournament, somebody would turn up with a dwarf list that's basically made out of iron breakers, and it's like and then somebody else would have like an army full of like corn chosen, for instance, just to do DPS against that DPS check, if that makes sense. So you don't see anyways. So the point of this whole pairing process is to make sure that a team gets the right opponent to the right player. But these are like instead of like doing cards to say this is the opponent I'm putting forwards, they'll just open this box, and so these are absolutely excellent bits of
And incredible,
art.
and they were
Oh, that's just brilliant. I wish it would pause somewhere where there's a decent still on these things, because these are brilliant. But then, yeah, she looks at some of the painting of like some of the models, and they're absolutely gorgeous. Now, competitive players don't paint as a claim. Of course, some of them want to paint really well because there's often painting awards at tournaments, and these people are competitive. So of course they're going to want to win that as well. Like they're there to win a trophy. So I think it's fairly logical to assume that competitive players would, or some of them at least, would really hone their skills to try and win those painting trophies. Because some players what's his name he does another like show. Russ Veal, I think his surname is. He's an outstanding painter and a really good player. He's absolutely fantastic, but he's a really good example of somebody who, he chooses an army that's going to play well into the current meta, and then spends not too long a period of time actually painting it and building it like to an outstanding standard, something that I could never do because I frankly don't have the patience. But yeah, so I think it's a bit to me. This whole video, it kind of surprises me about the preconceptions about competitive people at tournaments, and yeah, competitive players don't paint. So she got to award the painting award, which she gave to these guys, these non-metallic metal Seraphon. Obviously, what was that? Oh yeah, this was about the hotel. Competitive players aren't fun. Now, she's talking about like the camaraderie and that, you know, in this bit that you know, I think I might go back to the start actually, because there's a few bits around here.
Nutella and hot chocomel machine included with the price
I
of
thought we were
staying
talking
there.
about.
The team's event is the main reason why people turn up to this kind of sportiness would work with Warhammer, but now that I've seen it in real life, I think that I absolutely love it because it's just so funny and hilarious for both the players and the people watching. I'm not big into sports, and especially not things like football, but things like the world.
That, I think, is really telling that she mentions football, because you know, I play rugby, and you talk about, like, she said there's no sort of side glances and there's no kind of back chat and there's no kind of like, and then later on she talks about the fun banter in between the teams, and I'm like, that's pretty much every sport apart from football. Like, football's the only one that comes to my mind anyway as being ridiculously tribal. Like, people are nasty to opposition fans and opposition teams in football specifically, but in other sports everybody's just there, that they all know, you know, you're all there to like, you know, if you're playing any sport, you're on a team, you've got a job to do, your coach is giving you a job to do, you know what you're doing, and you know, it's 100% never based on, I want you to take down that player over there, because if we get them injured, you know, then we win the game. That happens in football. I don't know, but that happens in football. And like, you know, competitive Warhammer players are not, you know, are not like that. If you know, because the other thing is, if you don't play well, you soon get a rep, and somebody does have a word, right? Like, I've seen some people in AOS who've played over the years, and they've not been playing very well, and you know, potentially breaking the rules, but then eventually somebody's sort of taken them to one side and then said, you know, like, the way you do, yeah, don't do that, it's a bit douchey, and like, don't you know, when you're measuring, just be careful, because it's a tournament, and like, you know, it grinds people's gears, you know, when you kind of measure and you do like back to front, and then you put something down and you move it and then you shuffle it around, and then that just really annoys people. So just don't do that. Like, you know, measure loads, measure. It's like carpentry, really. Measure twice, cut once. You know, measure the stuff as much as possible. Use proxies, like take bits of paper that are the same size as, like, or take spare movement trays, so then you can like measure stuff out beforehand. And with, like, if you do everything with your opponent's consent, right, you can't go wrong. And I think that's the really key message to anybody getting into competitive Warhammer of any description. Just, you know, try and do as much of it as possible with your client's understanding before you've done it. And if you've got some weird, dodgy play that you want to play, I've had this conversation loads at tournaments where I'm like, right, what I want to do is this, and these three things interact in this way. Do you agree? Not using that line, obviously being a bit more friendly than that, but fundamentally saying, well, this leads to this, leads to this, and this is the intended outcome. All right? Do you agree that I can do that? And sometimes people say no, because I don't think you're allowed to do two with one, and then you have a little quick look at the rules each, and then you come to an agreement. And sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, I've got that wrong. Thanks for pointing that out, because I wouldn't want to be caught cheating. You know, so it's really important that you know. So there are some things that but the point is that you very rarely get people do like really horrible spawny stuff. That happens loads at local clubs, right? And that's, I think, a lot, because these like local players who are quite competitive in nature have designed their list to kind of beat the opponent. Like they know what they're up against, so they kind of design the list to beat that opponent. And because they've arranged like a friendly game or whatever, and then you get there and they're like, you can, and they do stuff that like they don't understand the etiquette of the game yet because they haven't been to loads of tournaments and played loads of games where people actually care about winning. And they do little things that are just like, like for instance, you might have moved a unit of skirmishers accidentally to within 24 inches of like a hellblaster, for instance. This happened to me recently. I'd moved a unit within range. Just I hadn't remembered that the hellblaster was there. If that was at a tournament, my opponent would say, you're moving within range of the hellblaster. Do you mean to do that? And I go, oh Christ, no, and then move it back. And he didn't because he's not been to a load of tournaments. And actually, it didn't matter. It was all fine. Like I didn't mind. Like ultimately, I'm a grown up. I know that I've cocked up by moving that unit there, and I know that was my mistake, and he's penalising me for not thinking about it. And actually, that did help me later on in the game because it helped me kind of every single movement phase. I was aware of where the Hellblaster is, and actually, that was a really good learning opportunity for me that I'm going to take forwards. That it's not like AOS. There is stuff that can't move and does a lot of damage, but it can't move. So you've really got to be mindful of those massive DPS pieces and their auras and their ranges on the tabletop, which because I've played a lot of AOS, everything moves about, so measuring ranges isn't as important. But yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff about like etiquette and the game. My opponent was a lovely guy, so like I know he wasn't trying anything on, but do you know what I mean? It's just one of those little things where I was sat there and I was observing. Oh, I'm not going to ask him to take that back because that's also rude and that will annoy him. But equally, hold on, where do I... No, I haven't made a mistake, haven't I? And I need to suffer the consequences. It's my fault. But also, I need to remember for next time. Then she's like... Louisa's, interestingly, like polled her members. Look, she's got 122,000 subscribers. I mean... I haven't even got over 1,000, so like, who the hell am I? But this I find really interesting. Is like as a competitive player, there is a criticism that like, she draws the analogy that Golden Demon make people feel guilty, and then talks about like going to a local gaming store and getting absolutely smashed by somebody who's actually properly a competitive wargamer. But that's kind of the person I was talking about, that really seriously like competitive player. That this is what these are all. Yeah. So the thing is, right, if this is you, right, and you're practicing for a tournament, you need to tell people that this is a list that you're going to take to tournaments. I do that. Sometimes I arrange a game and I'm like, look, I can bring a nice fluffy list, or I really would like to try out something I'm going to take to a tournament. So what sort of game do you want to do? And again, do it with your opponent's consent. Don't just launch it on them and just say, right, here's my super competitive list. And they go, oh, I was thinking about just taking some stuff that I've got lying in a cupboard and I've spent 3 years painting. And, oh, it all dies because it's all rubbish, but it looks great. You're like, don't launch that on people. That's really unfair. Yeah. Yeah. There is... The thing is, right, these are two that... The thing about this video that I find really interesting is that it really does show that Louise is not a competitive player or hasn't done any tournament, because these two are the same in my mind. Like, I love practicing for tournaments, I love going for tournaments, and I find them a lot of fun. And the thing is, and I'm getting slightly defensive now, but ultimately it's a war game. it's about winning. Like, yeah, it's about having fun, but you're a general marshalling your troops to go forth and grab victory, and and that's kind of the game. Like this, it's, do you know what I mean? It's I don't know. I just find that a bit kind of it's like you've not really understood the mission. Like, this is a game about war. It's about winning, right? Like, or a heroic last stand, or something. It's about finding some kind of victory somehow. Like, if especially at a tournament, if you're like getting absolutely smashed, your sort of your victory conditions in your head go from, all right, I want to win the game, to I want to, okay, I'd like to tie now, go to, I want to kill your big massive monster thing, to, and as the kind of like your army slowly dwindles, you're like, right, I just want this unit to survive the whole game. And your victory conditions become, as you get more and more smashed, if you're not being very successful, then your victory conditions get narrower and narrower. And I want to take that hill, so you kind of create these narratives whilst you're playing a game, and I think that's something that's a bit overlooked. That you start off wanting to win, but then the conditions narrow. You don't start off saying, "Oh, do you know what? I quite fancy just." Well, sometimes you do actually, but you don't start off saying, "Oh, do you know what? I think I'm just going to fight over that hill and just try and win that hill. Doesn't matter if I win the game or not. I want that hill." Like that's that kind of narrative style play. The narrative style play, even so, is more or less about about winning in some description or another. Like there is a success and fail in this game. You do pass and fail dice rolls. Like, it's not like I just find that kind of mentality of I'm just here to have fun at a game that's about killing things. I don't really. It's like saying, oh, I'm going to play Warhammer Total War, but I don't really mind if I don't really need to win any battles, do I? Oh, look, the campaign's over. Oh, I might as well start. Do you know? I just don't. I know Warhammer Total War is different because it's you up against up against the PCs. I play solo at one player. I don't play online Total War. But anyway, the point I'm making is that, like, I don't see how it's possible to go into a game of Warhammer without the mindset of, I want to be victorious. Like, that's kind of like the default position to me. Tell me if I'm wrong. Like, seriously, if there's something that I've totally misunderstood about this whole thing, maybe it might give me a bit more headspace to sit down and paint at stuff rather than, witter on about other people's videos. Now, she actually, there was a bit where she's talking about this here, actually. I'll just play this bit, actually, because this bit I thought was the bit I really want to comment on, so I'll just go through it.
Your opinions on what you think about the idea of competitive Warhammer as a whole. And oh boy, did you have some opinions. I'm happy to say that most people were really personally want to play the game that way, but they have no issue with how other people want to enjoy their hobby, or saying that they'd maybe like to try it out sometime, but they're not really sure how, or if they're good enough to join a team or try to dip their toes into that kind of event. This attitude good enough to...
This thing, I'm pointing at the screen with my finger. I'll do it with the actual mouse pointer. I think, like, and I know this isn't going to happen, because it's a bit of a pipe dream of mine, but I'd like a Warhammer to really look at other competitive sports, and especially with Warhammer, like, I think they could learn a lot from stuff like Strongman, for instance, which is quite similar. You have 5 events to do. Which is a bit like having 5 games. But the one thing that I wish they'd learn from that is, like, people grade themselves. Like, you enter as a beginner, and then once you've podiumed as a beginner, you then move on to the novice category. And then once you've podiumed as a novice, you go on to intermediate, and then you go into open category. Open category is like people who are, like, super, super strong. Like, they're, Eddie Hall, level of strength. Mark Felix, that kind of, Brian Shaw, that kind of person. There will be a few people in every town that are this level of strength, but the point is that these people are very, very rare. And they're going to be very, very rare in any kind of war game as well, obviously. So people self-categorize, and it's like after you've been to a few and you've competed a bit and you've done really well at a certain level, it's time to move on to the next level. And I think that's true with and I wish we would do something like that with Warhammer, because you could have a weekend event where you've got 80 people turning up, but across those 4 categories you could just have 20 in each sort of thing. So you have a beginners tournament and a novice tournament and an advanced, intermediate, whatever tournament, and then an open tournament. I think that would be quite cool, but I know it's not going to happen because that's not how the hobby's ever been structured. But it would be nice to have not a beginners tournament, but something where people could self-categorize and just sort of dip their toe a little bit. But that's a pipe dream of mine, and I think it's a missed opportunity for the community. So I'm not arguing anybody. Well, I mean, it would be worth a go, but it might fail. So it's just an idea.
Join a team or try to dip their toes into that kind of event. This attitude of let people enjoy their hobby the way they want to is just love the minis, and you think Stormcast lore is amazing, and you've read all the books and you've painted your favorite miniatures and you've scraped a list too much, and the more narrative players wish this wasn't the case. And this is something that could very well be true.
So here she's talking about Games Workshop, the rules writers, they write it for competitive players. I'll come back to that.
But I fully admit I don't know a lot about this subject, but I can see how it would be cause for concern for some. So good luck, narrative players, fighting the good fight against the Games Workshop rule team. I hope you win. Also,
if you're a narrative player, you don't need rules. Just saying. If you're wanting to tell a story, you don't really need rules. You can just tell a story. You don't need rules to sit down and write a book. Just saying, if the point of rules is to give a structure, and the reason that Games Workshop take data from tournaments, right? The reason they look at the data at tournaments and what's going on in the competitive scene is because they're like your play testers. Like anybody who's on YouTube and has seen the Spiffing Brit or Josh from Let's Game It Out, or Real Civil Engineer or whatever. These guys, right? What they do is they pick games apart, right? And they find out where it's broken, and that data is invaluable to people creating games because it shows where the game is bust and where they need to fix it. So, of course, Games Workshop, if they have any brains or whatever, will be looking at the competitive scene and going, okay, what's working and what's not? Where can we make this game better? And the best place to find that is from the guys who are really going to tear the arse out of it. So, of course, and if you're a narrative gamer, just make some stuff up. If you want to play a narrative game, just make it up. You don't need rules. You don't even need dice. Do you know what I mean? You just roll a d20. Just play a bit like D&D. If that's what you want to do that. You don't need all of this, and the rules and everything. And if you're sat there saying, well, I want a bit more of a narrative game, a massive army, that's not a very narrative sort of, setting. It's two big things crunching. If you want to play narrative, play Necromunda. That's quite narrative. Or, that Necromunda's not balanced at all, but play Necromunda if you want something that's a bit more narrative. Or, if you've got £3 million spare, go and find an old copy of Mordheim. Or, do you know what I mean? I just find that a really interesting, argument about competitive versus narrative. It's just, to me, again, that's a bit of a weird take, because if you do want narrative, play narrative, and you don't need rules. And if you want to play a game against somebody who's playing narrative, then You know, maybe you need rules for like when the characters clash and you want to dice off and you want that to be random. But do you know what I mean? Or just play. I don't get that.
Loads and loads of messages saying that apparently the 40k scene is way, way worse than the Age of Sigmar one.
Yes, yeah, it is.
With
Yeah, like there's way worse. There's a lot more people doing it, and you know, arseholes make up a certain percentage of the population. So if there's more people doing it, then there's going to be more arseholes. That's just life, and arseholes exist, right? Just whatever. Don't let them get you down. Maybe I'm one of them. I don't know. But like, yeah, I mean, there have been some really like weird things in 40k. Like there was the guy who painted his like Black Templars or whatever all up as like with the swastika and took that to a tournament and thought that was okay. That's the funny bit. So I turned up and said, "Oh, I've done some Nazi Space Marines," as if, which is fine, isn't it? And everybody's like, "No, not really. No, not really." Which then sparked its own controversy because I think somebody else had turned up to. I can't remember whether it was that tournament or another one with like USSR flags on everything, which apparently was fine. And I'm like, but they were slightly more genocidal than the Nazis over the entire. I'm like, maybe if we're gonna, let's just not do politics in Warhammer, please. Because like real world's horrible, whereas this one we can fantasize, which is kind of the point. So. Don't introduce real world stuff into Warhammer. Like, there's bolt action for that. If you want to be, a Nazi commander, go buy some Germans from bolt action. That's fine. That's what the game's for. Don't shoehorn politics into hobby, please, because that way lies ruin. Regardless of whichever extreme angle you are, like, I wouldn't want. Could you imagine? It would probably be okay, but can you imagine if somebody turned up to a tournament and they put the Conservative Party logo on all the flags of everything? My God. And what kind of sad act or even the Labour Party? Oh, it's a Labour. Can you imagine that? Oh, cringe. Anyway, so yeah, I mean that has happened. If anybody's seen that kind of nonsense at tournaments, please let me know. I so want to laugh at these people who take themselves way too seriously.
Loads of toxic players and stuff like that. But again, I don't really have an opinion on that because I've only...
Yeah, like I said, arseholes exist, and if there's more people doing it, there's likely to be more arseholes. It's just human nature, I'm afraid.
Ever been to Age of Sigmar tournaments, so feel free to politely and respectfully discuss the subject with your fellow Warhammer fans in the comments section. Politely. But the one kind of message that I got which I was in strong disagreement about were people saying that all competitive Warhammer players are unfun tryhard.
Yeah. Also, like I'm a slightly left-wing free speech advocate. So if you want to be rude in the comment section, I don't care. Like, you can have your opinions. People will judge you for you. I'm not. Anyway, I'm getting on to. Don't shoehorn politics into the hobby. You just told everybody off for doing that, and then you're doing exactly the same done. Stop it. Right. Toxic players at Warhammer tournaments. Okay, so I've been to a few. I don't know how many. Possibly. I've definitely played over 100 games at tournaments. I'm not sure how many have I actually been to over. Oh God, if you go back even further. Oh God, I don't know. I think I managed like 4 or 5 a year. Like maybe since 2014, bar COVID, so that's like 8 years. So I've probably been to about 40 tournaments, 40 tournaments, something like. Oh no, then there's this year. So with AOS, 40 tournaments probably, and then with old Warhammer, I went to a few. So I might have done 50 or so. So I've played probably, most of those have been 2 days, although I have done some 1 days. So I've played like a few hundred games of competitive, whatever. Um, and I have to say, like, there have been, in my experience, two people who've actively tried to cheat, and who've been engaged in power gaming nonsense. Like, yeah, one guy, for instance, we had what he called an interesting rules interaction. And his interesting rules interaction, we were talking about. So then he went off and says, "Oh, I'm going to talk to the TO about this." Basically, it was AOS. I had Archaon. He had Scarbrand. Right. I didn't done the thing on Archaon that said, when Archaon dies, he can fight. So basically, Scarbrand charged Archaon because that was inevitable. Scarbrand was going to take out Archaon. So I thought, right, well, I'm going to make Archaon die, so then at least he can take out Scarbrand back. Okay? But then he said, oh no, I've got this other ability that means I can pile in an attack again. So I'm going to go check that, because you die, you take your model off, you kill Scarbrand, but then how do I pile in an attack again? And I'm like, well, you can't because you're dead. Like, it's like, yeah, but I mean, I've already triggered that, so that happens before you've piled in and attacked again. And I'm like, well, it says in the rules that when the model is removed from the table, it can pile in and make attacks. So, if you want me to remove the model from the... So it was a pretty obvious to me that... Anyway, so he went off, and this is the point where he tried to cheat. He went off, and about 5 minutes later came back and said, yeah, I've spoken to the TO, and they agree with me. And I'm like, no, I don't believe that for a second. Sorry, but I just don't believe that. So... he said, okay, well, let's go together then. I thought when he said, I'm going to go get the TO, that he was going to go and get the TO to come to the table and talk about it, because that's what happens. Like, if you're at a tournament and there's a bit of a rules dispute, and, it's really helpful to get the TO. That's not like saying, oh, I need to tell Sir, and it's more like, well, actually, if this is like game 1 of 5, I need to know what this rule actually is for this tournament, because everybody's kind of got different interpretations. So, it's actually really useful for everybody, because then the TO has then actually had a chance to think about it. And if it comes up over here, it might come up over there. So actually getting the TO involved in those decisions early on, before you've had a long conversation about it, is actually a really good thing. And TOs actually want to get involved and discuss those rules. That's kind of why they volunteer to do it, right? Because they want to have those conversations. So anyway... we then went down, and it turns out he hadn't spoken to the TO, and we spoke to, and this is where my naivety came in. We then spoke to a very, very experienced Warhammer player, talked to him, a chap called Jack Armstrong, great guy, and he agreed with me, obviously. So now this is where my naivety kicked in, because at that stage I should have then said, well, hold on, you said you went and talked to... Who did you actually talk to? Like, because you told me you'd gone to... And if... So you lied to gain an advantage in the game. That's cheating, and I should have then gone to the TO and said, he needs banning. That this is just out and out cheating. Like, and that was... But, like, I know I've gone on a little mini rant about it, but that was one out of hundreds of games I've played in tournaments. And, like... To be honest, I've experienced way worse than that at like a local gaming club. I've experienced people just like actively cheating and moving stuff around. Not at tournaments. At tournaments, actually, people tend to take the game a bit more seriously. So you tend to see people sticking to the rules a lot better than a casual game, because people think, oh, it's casual. People not measuring things properly and just nudging stuff around the table and just like, because ultimately... So... I think there's less of this toxicity at tournaments than there is just in the community in general. And I really, what I really want to say is that if you are thinking about getting into competitive gaming, the kind of the toxic behaviour that you experience, like at a local friendly local gaming store or whatever, actually there's less of it at tournaments because everybody's there to play Warhammer and to try and win. Like there's a clear agenda for everybody. And when I say I try and win, like it doesn't necessarily mean it's not at all costs. Like the tournaments are so much fun, and if you haven't been to one, please go to one and just try it out. Find a local like one dayer and just give it a go. And I promise you, you will have at least 2 really enjoyable games of Warhammer. The third might be a bit crap, but you'll have at least 2 enjoyable games of Warhammer, and you will meet loads of people who are just really super nice. But
because that's just not what I've experienced, and I have video evidence. People were at their tables caring deeply about their games, and yes, taking their decisions and tactics and roles very seriously, but they were laughing and smiling and going through the motions as they did it, celebrating their victories and showing frustration at their mishaps, but also I saw players celebrating their opponents' victories, and importantly, not delighting and rejoicing in their opponents' failures or
this is the last thing I'm going to comment on, and I'm going to finish the video off talking about this. This is still of or a pause of a video that's not really, not designed to be paused, obviously. This is Team Denmark. They won again. This is the 3rd year in a row. Team Denmark at AOS Worlds, like they get national press coverage and stuff. Denmark really take AOS very seriously, it seems, and that's Team France. Denmark won again, and you know the thing is like that. So there is a lot of banter, there is a lot of competitiveness. Obviously, that's kind of the point. There's a lot of, but there are also a lot of people just they're having fun, and like I can't say this enough really, but like don't sweat going to tournaments there. And the thing that I find is like, especially like if you've got a load of stuff to paint and you've got your list in your head and you've bought the minis, or it's part of your pile of potential or shame, whatever. You'll find that going to a tournament really helps you with that because it's giving you an objective, a deadline. You've got to get it all painted for that. Like if you turn up with grey minis, you know, people do frown on that, generally speaking, unless the tournament organizer says otherwise. It's pretty much frowned upon. You know, there's a lot of stuff that Louise has come across from her video and from asking her community, which is like, you know, 200 times the size of mine, that you know, there's so much of a misconception, and like I said, I'm 100% sure that you'll find going to a tournament. The thing that you'll find about going to a tournament, right, if you're thinking about going, is that how do I put this? It's a lot harder physically than you think because you're on your feet for quite a lot of the day. There's normally seating, but you're on your feet for a lot of the day. So you tend to end up with like a sore lower back because you're kind of leaning over a table all the day. So you're employing those kind of spinal erectors quite a lot. So you end up with a bit of a sore back. You end up with a very dry mouth. Like taking lots of liquid is massively important. I might actually do a video on how to prepare for a tour. I'll do a video on how to prepare for a tournament. But there's lots of other things that I think people don't consider about tournaments that are the bad sides of going to tournaments are actually like the other demands, and you know it takes up a lot of time and Actually, you will just have loads of fun games of Warhammer. Like so if you are thinking about it, or if you've got experiences of going, you know, make a comment down below. I will talk to you. I've managed to respond to every single one of my comments so far, but yeah, and I think that kind of crowing at other people's failures, I mean, that's not true. but normally people like present their massive failures as like because it's funny. Like it's really really funny when just some things are just so ridiculous that you just have to laugh at them. Like this wasn't a tournament, but this happened recently. I was playing. Um, uh, it was the Empire player again that I was talking about earlier, but he charged his wizard or no, his warrior priest into the back of a big block of of chaos warriors, which also contained my level 4 sorcerer lord. I don't know. I know I've told everybody don't put your sorcerer lord in units. I just did. Like I don't know why. To be honest, that was a dumb decision. Um, but he won the combat. The thing broke, and he overran and killed it. Obviously, which is just funny. This warrior priest comes on and goes bonk, and kills one bloke, and in a challenge. I don't know why, but I moved my champion through the ranks, so he challenged me, and therefore I couldn't attack him, which was idiot. But he goes splat on this one guy, and the rest go oh and run off, and then he sort of mows them down with his hammer. But those sorts of things are just funny. Like I think Archaon got killed when I was doing AOS. I think my Archaon got killed by a goblin once, which was just in combat, which is just hilarious. Just one solitary goblin went and killed the Lord of the End Times. It's just those sorts of things happen all the time in tournaments, and you get all these weird, crazy stories, like just these. Like one of the tournaments I went to recently, somebody had a load of ogres, and they played against a goblin player who had like 9 or even 12 fanatics, who flooded the board with fanatics, and they just walked through them, like just bounced off their shins, which is just like, oh, but you took like 9d6 strength 5 AP 2 hits. It's like, yeah, I took like 3 wounds. It's just like, what's that? It's got. It's just that you get these stories that are just really, really funny, and you get loads of them at tournaments. It's in between games where you start talking to people, and you'll find yourself asking the question, "So how are you getting on?" Loads. You'll find yourself thinking, "You're an absolute dick. Why do you keep asking that question?" It's like it's. But it's just like I don't know. Everyone's how are you getting on? What's going on? Have you got any stories? Basically, like everybody's like, what's the gossip? Anything cool happen? And that's and that's like overridingly the conversation that's had between all the gamers, and you generally speaking get a story. Like at another tournament I went to, I got like I had like 12 attacks with my chosen against somebody's hammerers, right? Hitting on 4s. Missed all of them. Like, what's 2 to the power 12? It's an astronomically big number, and I managed to roll it. So, there's... I think it's such a... What is 2 to the power 12, actually, off the top? I can't remember. For God's sakes. Calculator 2... to the power 12 is 4,090. Was it 12? No, it was more than that, wasn't it? It was it? No, it was 12. Yeah, so 4,096. But 1 in 4,096, I managed to roll that. not to my benefit, sadly. But absolutely, so go to tournaments. Like, don't. If you're like Louise's, other followers and subscribers, and you're a bit kind of on the fence. I don't imagine much of the people who watch my videos are, because I mostly do meta stuff and tier listings and rankings, and everything's presented in a kind of competitive manner. So I can't imagine there's. Well, I mean, maybe there are, and maybe you're sort of thinking about it, which is why you're watching these sorts of videos. But seriously, like. Go to tournaments. They're tons of fun, and you'll meet lots of people who are like-minded. There will at every single tournament, right? There's at least, I don't know, 5 or 6 people who that'll be their first, or first for a while anyway. And, you know, none of those guys have got super competitive stuff because they don't really know what works yet. The one thing I would say is that it is a different game. And what I mean by that is that people are super respectful of the rules. So the stuff that, you know, you might play locally, they might play slightly differently. So you just got to be able to adjust your strategy a little bit in your head. Not massively, because it's, you know, it's more or less the same game. But I say it's a different game in that, and you will learn an awful lot about how the game works by going to tournaments, like how it really works. So yeah, I mean, definitely go. You know, Louise is absolutely bang on in this video. I think quite a lot. There's a lot of I don't know how to. That's more for what to do to prepare yourself for a tournament. I'm going to save that for another. That's another really good idea. Thanks for being a sounding board, guys, because I've come up with another decent idea for a vid. Maybe. I mean, let me know if you want me to do a preparing for a tournament video. Maybe I ought to book myself to go to one and just like do a video about me actually preparing for the tournament and sort of talk you through the steps I go through and list building and kind of painting stuff to deadlines and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, next one I go to, I'm probably going to take Lizardman, despite the fact I'm desperate to get my Khemri all done. I'm probably going to take Lizardman. But yeah, cool. So anyway, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Give the video, if you have liked it, obviously, then there's an appropriate button to express that. Like here, like this one. I've clicked on that one for Louise, and there is this button here that you could click if you're at this stage. Which you know, if you obviously don't, if you think I'm an arse, because you know you'll get 100% similar. I don't really change very much. I'm more or less the same bloke I was 10 years ago. So if you think I'm an arse now, you are going to continue to think I'm an arse in the future. So unless you like listening to an arse gibbering on for a while, I mean, that's some people do. What am I talking about? You know, in another video, somebody said, come up with a script. And, like, I kind of have, actually. I've written down some talking points, and which is why I keep looking over there, because I've written down some talking points, like, from this video. So I've watched the video, like, twice now, and I've come up with some talking points. And I've not stuck to them at all, so that doesn't work. Like, oh. So some knocking behind. It's the dog. She's decided she needs to scratch. So, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, the outro stuff. So, yeah. Also, you know, if you are, you know, if you do fancy travelling to Lincolnshire at some point for a game, let me know. If you want to do like help me out, because I need some people to do battle reports with. So, you know, if you're interested, let me know, and we'll definitely get something sorted. Because I'd like to do a few more battle reports, to be honest. Especially now my knee's a bit knackered and it's like rugby pre-season, so I haven't got any games on Saturdays. And I can't really do strongman for another probably couple of months. So there's a few competitions that I'm not going to do. So, you know, if you are interested, let me know. I'll quite happily pay for your hotel if you want to stop over, because local hotels are cheap as piss, so that's absolutely fine by me. Actually, they're not terrible. They're not great, but they're not terrible. I think we've got a 3.5 star. I'm not selling it, am I? But I'm not a liar either. Oh, great, yeah. Yeah, I remember going to... Sorry, this is the final aside, but I remember going to a tournament and some bloke said, oh, you should go down there. There's loads of really nice food stalls and blah, blah, blah. And as you can tell, like, strongman rugby player, I'm not, you know, I'm not down with the whole vegan stuff, I'm afraid. If you are, fine, whatever, do what you like. But I'm not. So I went down this thing like to all these amazing like street food stalls. It was all fucking vegan. Like, I'm like, that's not really what I meant by street food. What I meant by street food is some dirty oriental thing with noodles that have probably been dropped on the floor and like beef that looks like it's possibly not cow. That's the street food I want. That gnarly kind of. I really like that kind of eating. Like you know, you're almost certainly going to get food poisoning off it, but it's going to taste amazing. That's the kind of street food I meant, not some kind of falafel fritter thing. Just like I remember sort of going up and down these. Oh yes, really good, amazing food locally, and I'm like, right. Anyway, why am I talking about that? This has actually been quite a lot of fun talking about tournament stuff and my experiences of tournaments, because I've got quite a lot, and obviously I've got quite a lot stored up that I've not really spoken to anybody about. So anyway, yeah, if you want me to, do another video nattering about tournaments and stuff, I'm quite happy to. Let me know what you want. I've got another couple of videos coming out this week about tier listings for Warhammer the Old World. I really desperately want to do that battle report, that Matt Goldsborough battle report sort of video. Well, it's a live stream video, so that we can go through a game of Warhammer the Old World. And I want to do that a bit more often, where we sort of sit down and paint and do some battle reports. But that may or may not be a thing. But I want to do that kind of sit down and paint live stuff. I really like doing the stat show on Mondays as live vids, because it's really nice having like that interaction through the chat rather than just recording stuff. Although recording videos does work a lot better for this kind of stuff, where you're just reacting to somebody else's video, because you've got a bit of a script, and having other people like I struggle to keep to a script like at the best of times. So sticking to a script where people are actually asking me questions and trying to talk to me is like 100% impossible. So 100%, I guarantee you. I'm not. Weirdly, at work, I'm really structured and orderly, and everything goes in its place. And like the processes that we go through, like, because I'm a financial advisor professionally, but like the financial planning process that we go through is really, really highly structured, and I'm a very methodical thinker when it comes to systems and processes at work. But when it comes to Warhammer, like, I'm all over the place. It's like I'm autism at work and ADHD in the hobby. I mean, I don't have either of these things, but I'm just like using those as, I'm just using those as like metaphors for that people might understand. But yeah, really weird. Anyway, I'm going to stop getting distracted by everything and like listen to some more videos and try and finish these Ushabti before I've got to go over to rugby training. I'm not going to get them done, am I? Because I've only got 20 minutes before rugby training. Anyway, but toodaloo, catch you around soon.